you'll be surprised by how much when you pour and invest in a student athlete's life, it's not about reciprocation. It's what they're able to actually open their eyes to and step into. Because I think sometimes we kind of held back by what we believe are our own limitations.
Welcome to the Generation Youth Podcast. As always, I'm your host, James McLamb. I'm here with a new friend, Robert Taylor. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing today, James?
I'm doing well. I'm hoping that the Generation Youth audience is not confused by the two sophisticated accents that are going to be competing against each other today. So I'm hoping that's the case, that they can follow us, because we are the ones who know how to speak it correctly. So we're going to have fun today. Well, listen, you and I just connected recently, found that there's a lot of synergy between what your mission is in life, what you're passionate about, and what we do here at Generation Youth. And so if you don't mind, I would love for you to take a couple minutes and introduce yourself to the audience so they get a little feel for who you are.
Sure, and thank you, James. I'm Robert Taylor, former resident of England, London. Transferred out to Seattle many years ago, and recently now native of Nashville, Tennessee. Recently been coaching soccer for quite some time, over 20 plus years. Been teaching for 8 to 9 years through middle school, and I consider myself a great mentor to the youth and particularly student athletes of various sports.
So what is it about working with young people, especially athletes, that, drew you to it, that, wants to, because a lot of folks are like, oh, I enjoyed, being that athlete myself, or I enjoyed the sport, and then they want to continue on, and they see coaching as an extension of that. Is that the case, or is there something deeper that you're trying to accomplish there?
That's a great question, James. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't want to continue my playing days. Right. I think a lot of coaches want to, continue to feel that connection to the sport long after they finish playing. But I felt that I had more of a calling, particularly to coaching and teaching. And a lot of that resides from being able to connect with student athletes. I didn't realize how that's going to take off during teaching, because coaching was my primary route of focus. Mm-hmm. But I've noticed over the years, particularly in that the early adolescent years, the hormonal changes, the cognitive changes, the identity crisis, there's so many different factors that come into play, particularly at the beginning of those kind of middle school years, or maybe even just before that. And that really kind of drew me to kind of wanting to understand kind of the position they've been placed in. And I didn't want to make assumptions based upon my own experiences, right, and feelings that I'd gone through as an adolescent. And I really got to grips with kind of understanding different characteristics and personalities of various students. And it kind of intrigued me more, and kind of starting to understand, whether it be in a classroom or whether it be on the sports field, we are very complex in various ways. And a lot of that starts with, kind of the emotional turmoils we have within our brains.
So what were the issues and problems that you saw them going through as these young athletes were just getting into, school? Competitive sports starts sometimes around middle school. Unfortunately, we have a lot of parents and that are putting them into high-level competitive even before that age, which viewers and listeners of the podcast know I'm not a very big fan of that kind of stuff. I think you should let kids be kids as long as they can be kids, and let them experience as much as they can. But what were the issues that you were seeing that you felt, hey, I want to help this? What were there? You talked about, self-identity some, but you want to dive into those a little more?
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was more like behavioral. A lot of that was happening. Well, in fact, there's been a lot of research on it that I know a lot of people tend to blame kind of the COVID years, that 2019, 2020, but really we were having some behavioral concerns and issues long before that, back in 2010, 2012. You can pull up many stats on that. And so as I was in these different contexts, I was watching kind of their frustrations. And a lot of that was kind of portrayed, not necessarily through performance and, like grades, as much as it was kind of their, tone, their body language, facial expressions, things that often come across sometimes verbal or nonverbal. And the more you dive into those kind of topics and nuances, we start to understand the individual more. And I think that's something that sometimes we just kind of oversee and think, oh, that's okay. The individual's maybe just having a bad day. And we tend to brush it off versus trying to address the situation. And I speak to this not just as a teacher and a coach, but also as a parent. because I believe the households also provide an environment in which we need to be more self-aware of not necessarily just how we choose to feel, but also watching those consistencies or consistent behaviors that keep showing up. And I know we're talking about maladaptive, kind of more negative behaviors, but they can be positive too. And I think we need to start to understand, kind of that phase of life that each individual student athlete is going through.
What kind of behaviors are you talking about? Because I'm trying to put my place of a listener. They're going, hey, he's talking about behaviors. I'm not sure if what I'm seeing is what he's talking about or if we're on the same page. Tell me a little bit more about what I should be looking for here or be concerned with if I'm working with these 10, 11, 12-year-olds, is what we're talking about. That's the age we're talking about, correct?
Yeah, that's sure. Anywhere in that young teenage group. I feel that it's more kind of this sense of being overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, those tendencies that come, and sometimes they can be something that's, it's not even necessarily incidental. It could be something that's not even attached to the moment as well. So for example, maybe, let's do an example. Say the kid's on a car ride to school and they've had a really bad, let's say they had a bad connection or conversation with a mum and it kind of frustrated them. Then they go into the classroom during the school and then one of their fellow friends decides to check in with them and says, how's your day? And then you lash out, right? So that's a mini example of how things can kind of show up. But I feel like we don't really know what those frustrations and angers may be unless we start to kind of sit down and take the time to pause. Oftentimes we're so quick to react, and more so adolescents are very quick to do that. And a lot of that is because physiologically, our hormones are all over the place as young teens. And that's not a get out of jail free card. That's more of a, hey, I'm recognizing the space you're in right now. I can give you space. And maybe we take an opportunity to step away and check back in. So, a lot of people will try and pause, check back in with their daughter or son another time. You could, maybe leave a note card under the bedroom door and just say, hey, I know you need your space right now. I'd be more than happy to check in with you. I love you. I want to learn more about your day, and kind of really put yourself in a position of, support and unconditional love. That's how I see that playing out.
I think a lot of folks, especially those listeners that are of my generation, are thinking, oh my gosh, we're catering to these kids too much. They need to toughen up. And my coach never, because that's true, my coach never gave me any kind of, space. If my attitude wasn't in the game, I told somebody before, the kind of coaching that we are trying to instruct athletic leadership and athletic coaches to do now did not exist when I was coming along. The only example that I had was get your head right. That was the most, extra coaching there. So how can a coach help them while they're on that field? Because you're only seeing them for maybe at most a couple hours, and that may only be 2 or 3 days a week, maybe sometimes 4 or 5, but most of the time about 3 days at the most. How can they help them? How can they help them with these behavior issues or feeling overwhelmed and angry? How are they going to deal with this? And at the same time, Robert, teach them how to play the sport, which is what they're there for to begin with.
Yeah, 2 or 3 questions there, but I'll try. I'll try and come back on that.
Yeah, as I was talking, I was like, I got more stuff going on here, and I was talking about, and I wrote it all down as I was talking. So.
No, it's great. Yeah, I feel like you kind of hit on the head. Coaches are very quick to be like, you know what, knuckle down, jump back in, everything's okay. In the sense that we want our athletes to be successful, of course. But I think ultimately it starts with self. We talk about helping student athletes, but if we're not in the right frame of mind and we're unable to regulate our own emotions as coaches, then we can't truly give our best self. So if we're not in tune with our own biases, we need to kind of, take a step back and do some of our own work, I believe, as coaches.
So your first step is really getting the coach's mindset, right, before we even address the athletes.
And that goes for parents too. I mentioned that back in the home, right, in terms of the note cards. All these things in terms of recognizing what someone's going through. At the same time, we need to understand, hey, this certain conversation with a student athlete as a coach kind of triggered me and it made me feel X, right? Maybe it made me feel joy. Maybe it makes me feel uncomfortable. And that could be for both the athlete as well as the coach. But unless we're truly in tune with how we're feeling based upon the interaction we're having with said player, I think it's really hard for us to not be biased towards said players. We see it all the time with coaches. Maybe you see it with teachers. You call them teacher pets. We also have that, coaches probably have their favorites too. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying it's something to be aware of, because then maybe we're missing those cues of other student athletes who really need our help. And I was actually reading something from Mark Beckett, the professor at Yale University. He has his own research center for emotional intelligence, and he was talking about his own upbringing. And it kind of made me really connect with him, because he was talking a lot about this anxiety and fear induced context. So he had a fairly rough childhood for sure. But even if a student athlete feels fearful or has this anxiety built up within them, he said, how do you expect that student athlete to learn in the classroom, let alone perform on the field? He said, in fact, it got to the point where he felt paralyzed, because his emotional turmoil, right? He hadn't dealt with his own feelings or even been given a platform or the tools to be able to regulate his own emotions. So instead, he just ended up lashing out constantly, right? Yelling at people, pushing people away, even though he probably wanted people to be in his social circle. So I know I've kind of gone full circle there, but it kind of makes me think, yes, the coach needs to understand and be self-aware of their own emotions and being able to regulate those in a positive way so they can be their best self for the student athlete. And at the same time, are they observing the behavioral cues of those student athletes to get them the help that they need? And to your third point, James, you mentioned that, what do coaches really do in these moments? Because they are limited on time, but teachers and coaches are, right? Even parents, we're limited on time. And so a lot of that time goes into the physical elements of what we do. But at what point are we inhibiting our ability to excel in our performance? Because ultimately it's our emotions that drive our behavior. And ultimately it's that response that comes. So how do we improve our reaction to said contexts or scenarios that we can benefit from?
I was thinking of my own experience of coaching that age, coaching baseball at that age. And when you said about having your favorites, you kind of do as a coach, you're drawn to those because in the heat of the moment, in the game, in the competition scenario, those are the ones you're going to lean on. But those other ones, I remember coaching a kid, he had some verbal and nonverbal behavioral issues. And there were three of us there. I was head coach, there were two assistants. So we would have talks about this kid a lot, about what are we going to do with him and what is going to happen with him and how are we going to empower him to perform his best within the role that we needed him to play on the team. Because the role that he came in wanting to play was influenced by, family members telling him, oh, we think you're this, but that's not the role that we saw him in. And how are we going to get him to do that? And it took some time. It really did was us having to have a behavioral mindset. And so much so that we had to decide as coaches who could handle this particular player, who could go to him in that moment and handle him during that time. So you hit it on the head with behavioral stuff on that. So how do you work with young athletes? Why would they come to you to get help? What are they doing there?
Well, I feel like the big thing, I'm going to get that question in just 2 seconds. I feel like coaches can or should be looking to set aside some time, even if it's once a week and it's 15 minutes a week, to teach something around, active listening or how to receive feedback or how to talk to somebody appropriately, whether it be the coach, teammate. There's so many different pockets of information we can grasp. And when we do that in a collaborative manner within our sports teams, it not only provides a new skill and a tool set to use, but we're actually collectively improving the whole, right? The whole entity and the whole system, whether it be the coach, the player, and the collective whole. So things that we do at Titan Performance is very much focused on emotional intelligence frameworks. So we really come from a strengths-based approach as we look to encourage and support individuals upon their emotional regulation journey, so to speak. We believe very much that IQ's talent-based and more grade-specific, but a lot of the EQ literature is diving towards, hey, we need to have said skill sets where we're able to interpret and understand social cues. We need to understand when someone's having a rough day, we're able to be very intuitive to that individual's feelings. So like you said earlier, is there a student athlete we could pair up with that other student athlete who may be just having a really bad day, right? Or maybe they're just not good at listening and they feel overwhelmed. Who's that individual that goes to that said individual, right? So we're starting to understand the other qualities that these student athletes possess so they can help the athlete, but more importantly, help you as a coach. And I feel like here at Time Performance, we do a great job of providing those skill sets, and we combine them with mental skills pieces. So things such as goal setting, visualizing performance, building that confidence set that really allows them to kind of, excel and drive their performance forward.
So, how would a parent know whether or not you guys are a good fit for them? Every parent, here's my experience, and it may be yours as well, is parents most of the time go to performance type coaching. They look at that and they think, performance coaching, oh, that's going to make them run faster, shoot the basketball better, hit the baseball better, kick the ball farther, do whatever it is. They're going to improve their physical thing. But you are taking the approach, that's kind of a secondary. We got to work on the mindset of this young athlete. We got to get them in the space they need to be in before we build upon this. Am I reading that right?
Yes. And I believe that what you're touching on here are very much the intangibles, right? Tangible things are physical. And I think that's why it's hard for parents to be like, oh, has my kid got a problem? I don't want that stigma. Well, it's not about going to somebody when there's a problem, right? This is something we need to be, mental strength, something we should be training every day. I don't think it's something that we should be putting, as a back burner. If anything, it should be the forefront of all sports performance, but also it all helps classroom performance and home life. And if you're looking as a parent, for me and being a parent myself, the benefits in it, you're going to reap the rewards, not in the moment, but it's going to be something where, it's going to require an investment, but you're going to start to notice shifts in your household. And when I mean shifts, I'm talking about behavioral shifts, energy shifts, things where, now your kid may be more polite and respectful all of a sudden, right? Or maybe that individual's now to pause, take a moment to breathe and talk things through with you in a nice tone instead of yelling at you. These are all things that we love to see, but how many of us can really take a step back, right, as a parent and be like, I've got the perfect kid? I don't think any of us have the answer, but I feel like we have the necessary techniques and tools to help provide that environment. And I feel like we do a good job of doing that as well on the front end with our courses, because we're, more about the initial assessment. So we really want to understand, and meet the individual where they're at. So it's not necessarily, the course isn't a one size fits all. Even though the modules we offer, we can still cater those modules in such a way to meet the individual's needs.
So in essence, if I'm hearing this right, you are providing and teaching them life skills, how to work on their mindset, how to work on relationship building, how to work on goal setting and improve their self-image, and using athletic training as the vehicle to which to teach those things. Because we know that the majority of the young athletes that come to you will not have a college career, a major college career. Their time is going to be in that. So you're teaching them skills that's going to go beyond their young athletic career. And I love that.
Yeah, I feel like, that's kind of the premise of what we do within the business at Time Performance. We're very much not just in the moment. We are looking at, like you said, whether they're playing college sports or not, it's prepping them for college experiences and more so the workforce. If you look at a lot of the data around emotional intelligence is very much around improved productivity and engagement, which I know something in this current generation we're in has a tough time with productivity and actually putting in, a significant work ethic that many others are used to. And I think that's proving to be a very difficult concept to get individuals to not just to step into something new, but understand what it takes to be highly productive. And that's not necessarily, writing papers and checking the boxes. I'm talking about being parts of teams in which those individuals can truly collaborate, right, in a positive way. Can they be a leader and lead teams in an effective way? Are they able to problem solve? Are they able to be flexible and adapt to different situations as they shift and change? Or do they get frustrated, overwhelmed, and quit? Which is actually something that's happened a lot these days. I think I might have mentioned to you before, but I was listening to a talk by Simon Sinek a little while ago, and he spoke a lot about Gen Z specifically. When they get hired for a job, they actually, rather than confronting a problem or a challenge they feel they have with a certain working environment, they'd rather quit than actually confront the boss or the CEO because they don't want to feel ashamed. And they just don't have the capacity or skill set to even have like eye-to-eye contact or have that personal human interaction and sit in that space. And if we're unable to be vulnerable and sit in those spaces, then what are we really creating moving forward?
And as a parent is listening to this and they're thinking about whether or not this type of training, whether it's with you guys or someone that's very similar is right for their child, they need to understand that yes, we all have seen the research. We've all heard the examples over years that participation in sports increases. That has so many tangible and intangible benefits for the athlete outside of the sport. And I think some parents think it has to do, that participation in sports has more to do with their physical training and their all that kind of things, and how well they can see on that. But they don't look at it from being a part of that just can make them a better human being. I just don't see that. And what you're doing is you're coming alongside those who are participating in this and said, let's take this up to another level. Let's just don't let it happen by accident of you being on a soccer team or a basketball team. Let's be intentional on training you through this. And that's huge. Intentional leading of young people is huge. And that's why I see you providing.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit it on the head with the word intentional. I think everything that we do is intentional, and it's habit driven, and it's all in aid of improving performance on and off the field. Like you said, I think it's about really making that individual the best version of themselves. And this is not necessarily just about making, the best athlete. And that's why our business is geared towards student athletes, because we believe in the whole person. And I feel like, I've had prior experiences on and off the field, and I've had students work through my leadership courses I've been teaching over the last 8 or 9 years. And I've seen even like 11-year-old boys, right? I've seen kids who have come into my classroom first day or first week at a new middle school. And they literally, this one boy, I never forget his name, it was Elijah. And I don't know how else to say it. He didn't just transform like the classroom culture, he transformed the school one. And yes, I worked with him and we worked with a class on certain, topics and tasks, but you'll be surprised by how much when you pour and invest in a student athlete's life, it's not about reciprocation. It's what they're able to actually open their eyes to and step into. Because I think sometimes we kind of held back by what we believe are our own limitations, right? We all have our own beliefs about ourselves and how we should be. But when you kind of provide that framework of kind of, oh yeah, this is where, my strengths are. And now I'm more self-aware of these other areas I need growth in. And this is how I can help certain groups. And all of a sudden, within 8 weeks, I can't tell you. I mean, this boy he didn't just transform himself. Like people were like, who is this kid? And it wasn't necessarily like he became a superhero, but he was doing the small things that sometimes we come to expect, right? Like holding open doors, which people don't really do very often. Or he's, his local supermarket filling up, the older generation's grocery bags. He was doing all kinds of stuff. And these are things he hadn't even thought about, a month or two prior. And this isn't me saying this course is going to, I'm just giving you an example of what can happen when that individual truly embraces their whole self. And they're not just looking at how people choose to perceive them. They're actually intentionally taking a look at themselves, like deep within, and saying, hey, this is what I have to provide. These are my areas of challenge. And how can I get that support or mentorship that can truly take me to, that better version of myself?
Yeah, and I think as parents of an athlete who has gone through some performance training, if I had known what I know now, I would have looked for someone who was intentionally trying to have a holistic view of training my son, not just an athletic version of training my son. Now, did he learn some of these intangible things from that trainer? Yes, but it wasn't intentional. And now that I look back on it, I see that it was more the personality of the trainer and those informal conversations they had in between drills and walking off the field, doing that kind of things. But there was nothing that was like, okay, today we're going to run these drills today. He was doing wide receiver training. We're going to do these particular types of drills, but we're also going to work about this. Because in order for you to be effective on the field, you have to have this. So I would have looked for something that was more intentional and more holistic, which is what you guys are doing at Titan. Tell us how the audience can get in touch with your organization and kind of what the process is for them to engage you guys.
Yeah, there's different ways in which you can kind of reach out to us. You can check us out on our social media platform. Instagram is kind of our main hub. That's at Titan Performance Coaching. So check us out there. You can see the website name up here on the screen right now. If you click on that, you can grab a free module at the bottom of the website page. And that will instantly give or ask for your email. So from there, you'll get additional information about our Edge Method course, if that's something you'd like to invest in. And also
what does that course entail? If you would give a brief description on that, because
yeah,
it spurred me. I like the name of it at least.
Yeah. The Edge Method course includes several components. It will include an initial 30-minute call with me. We'll kind of do like more of not just a Q&A, but really kind of get to grips with some of your needs and challenges, but also successes. It's good to know where you're at. We'll do like a detailed assessment, and you'll also get access to our 20 modules that are included in that Edge Method course, and they'll include videos and worksheets as well. On top of that, you'll also have access to our Titan community group, and that's something that we truly believe in, because we feel that when we're doing the work in a collaborative manner, it feels more like family, and we're all in it together. So not only can I support you, but also your fellow student athletes can share their perspectives and their challenges on the same journey you're likely experiencing. So we feel like that's a great platform to be a part of, and that will be included in that Edge Method course.
And all of those links and stuff that you just mentioned are going to be in the show notes. So if you're listening to us, just look at your favorite podcast app, and you can find that in show notes. And if you're watching, you know the drill. You just kind of look straight down. You see where I'm pointing, people? And click more, and they will all be right there in the notes and stuff there. So anything else that you can share about what you guys do that would drive our audience towards you guys, or just find it on Instagram?
Yeah, I feel like Instagram's a great platform. I also have, that's where I do most of the reels, but also I have a platform on YouTube. It's called Titans in Disguise. And I'll be building podcast content through that channel through the future. So feel free to subscribe to that channel as well. And that's where else you can find us. But yeah, I think that's all the platforms covered.
Well, Robert, I've enjoyed our conversation. I'm really excited about when I see training in organizations, performance type training groups for young people that see it more than just the athletic thing. There is two training groups that are close to us, and I know for a fact both of them are just come in, we'll teach you how to hit the baseball farther, pitch better, shoot the basketball, be faster, be stronger, and they're not working at all with the mindset. Kids go in there, learn their skills, and go home, and then some of them are ending up being horrible teammates. Great skill, horrible teammates. So I love what you're doing, and I think it speaks highly to your experience as a coach and a teacher to be able to take a step back and say, what do they really need? And so thank you for that, because that I really love that.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, you're so welcome. I hope the audience enjoyed it, and hopefully we can connect again at some point in the future and share more about some of the stories and journeys that some of these student athletes go on, because I feel like emotional intelligence really is a platform that is growing, particularly in the student athlete world. And I look forward to contributing to the field more in the future.
And audience, if you've stuck with us this long, you've obviously found some value in what you're listening to. So we would ask for you to please comment and like this podcast, but more importantly, share it, because there is someone that you know whose young person needs this kind of training. And maybe contact Robert to be able, maybe you're not being able to connect with them because of logistics, but maybe he could direct you to someone or give you an outline of what you need to be looking for, some guidelines, what you need to be looking for maybe in your immediate area if you're working for. No matter what it is, connect with this guy so you can learn more about what's going on. Robert, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you hosting today.
And thank you, audience, for sticking with us. And we'll see you again next time on another episode of the Generation Youth Podcast.